All right, guys. Little preface. I know you guys expected me to cover the All Blacks. Now I know versus Italy. My bad, everyone. But there just wasn't a lot of things that I thought were really stuck out to me in terms of the victory. If it had been an upset, I probably would have recovered it. But being that as it may, it is what it is. As for Japan versus Samoa, up the Brave Blossoms, but unfortunately the highlights are blacked out where I am at as of right now. So we couldn't get it done within a timely situation. But MLR news, very big this week. I know you guys would love to hear it. Let's get into it.
I need all the wins, yeah. Ain't no L's, I gotta get a no call and quits, yeah. Gotta keep on moving no matter how hard.
Here comes Danny Tusizawa, back to Baker, Baker with the fin. Kurt Baker in for DC, and this may well do it Old Glory with the try. The New Zealand Sevens legend, Kurt Baker with the cherry on top.
Can you believe it?
A lot of big news to break down in the MLR over the last couple of weeks. For those who do know me from my rugby coverage previously, a lot of you guys know me from my coverage of Houston and with my columns. They were my team to make it to the finals last year, and I really think this trade could either make or break them this year in terms of locker room support. They had traded away Joe Taufete'e to the Seattle Seawolves in exchange for AJ Alatimu and some salary cap considerations. You know, this was a big move and probably one of, if not the biggest move in the offseason. To me personally, you know, Seattle loses their all-time leader in points. The guy's been automatic since his debut, you know, a real stalwart for the organization. But I think the biggest question is, where does this leave Houston? Houston did make a lot of movements in terms of getting more forwards at scrum time. Perhaps that's why they traded away Taufete'e, who appeared in 19 stats in his career, scoring 6 tries, but had a hard time seeing minutes in Houston. But hey, the USA Eagle, man, that man is a beast at the scrum time. When he's on the pitch, things happen, and he is a massive bowling ball when it comes to running the rock. As for Alatimu, you know, in comparison, mostly scores off the tee, has a lot of try assists with 321 points and 45 caps. Only one of 5 players to do it in the MLR's history. I just don't see this adding up. I definitely think, why would Seattle trade probably their best 10 for a prop? I know they have a deep fly half list, but perhaps they like where they see it, and Alatimu was asking for a larger contract, and they just wanted to see where things went. I could see that, but then, of all things, where does that leave Houston? At, you know, their run with David Kutsa has been one of, if not the biggest stories in the MLR. His explosiveness as the MLR points leader for most of the year, his fanatic running style up and down the hashes, pushing the boundaries of where their team can go through not only kicks, whether cross, box, etc., punts. He'll make a impressive pass. Alatimu had some himself this past season, but Kutsa has been a running threat through and through. I mean, there's no room in the lineup for Alatimu as a starter if they wanted to play both. You know, I could say you could put David Kutsa at 15, but then that rules out Drew Wild, who's been an effective leader in that attack. You know, you could put him at 12, but then how would that work with Damakina? Kutsa is good on defense, but is he really going to be that war daddy in the middle, calling plays, hitting people up front, setting the tone on the line? I really don't know as of yet. The only way I could really see this work is in the current state, if you kept the lineup as is almost give Alatimu that as a rest option. You know, put him on the field more, give David Kutsa some rest, and kind of manage that load almost in the NBA kind of respect, and put him more to the fire in terms of managing the games late, where Kutsa unfortunately has come short against a couple opponents. I mean, really only Seattle, San Diego, and let's see, who else did they lose to? I'm hitting a blank here, but you guys get where I'm saying. If not, he does fit in the scheme actually very well as a runner. Alatimu, despite mostly scoring his points off the boot and through try assists, is probably a really consistent runner, one of the more consistent runners for the Seawolves in his career. Since 2021, the guy has been really moving around. He's a lot less sideline to sideline. He's a lot more downhill, but, he's able to line up distributing forms perfectly. He can fit passes into the lanes that I would argue Klutz is still developing into. It's a full lineup. It definitely leads a lot to be gained if they can manage to fit that within the locker room standpoint. Can I see Houston making a run this year with Alatima at the helm? I think their team has definitely gained a lot of confidence off of the signing, and as long as they don't lose the locker room, could be a filthy duo if they can either slot Klutz at 12 and keep Alatima at his standoff 10, or, somehow, use that double pivot and just kind of have him come off at like the 50th minute mark and let Alatima run the last 30 minutes. As long as that combo works, it's going to be lights out for Houston. I still think Houston's going to be my favorites coming out of the West, moving into next year. And, there's no doubt in my mind that they'll make it work. As for their quote unquote rivals in the East, their Cinderella story, Old Glory DC has been a stalwart in the offseason, making plays left and right, re-signing, bringing in just litanies of cap players. And now their latest two probably really round out the lineup, actually, in their signing of former Scotland international Rob Harley and USA Eagle Corey Daniel. In terms of Harley, the Glasgow stalwart has been an extreme presence on the pitch. He's been capped 267 times over his 12 years, and from 2010 to 2022, and recently has played in the Pro 2 with Colomiers. Pardon me if I butchered that. My French is terrible. In my time watching highlights of him from his time at Colomiers and at Glasgow, shout out Andrew Ford for that coverage. Old Glory, if they can get a similar production, gets an extreme force when it comes to forcing turnovers and keeping the ball in their hands. The thing that really stood out to me is that he's a textbook tackler. He really likes to get that low slide angle, wrap up in the knees, and bring him down. At maul time, this guy can collapse a maul safely, better than most. He has a high center of gravity. He holds up players extremely well. At the breakdown, he offers a lot when it comes to just forcing turnovers or even blowing people off of rucks. He brings a powerful, tall presence into that Old Glory locker room. And I definitely think on top of that, they also have, while not the most graceful runner, he brings in that uptight power. His fens are looking very nice, and they offer a lot when it comes to just hitting that open gap. Maybe he'll get that 10 to 15 meters, shore up a couple guys, take them out of the defensive line, and just offer a lot of space out in the width. But I would probably say the second biggest thing he offers is that he's a dual playmaker, not in the sense of that he can play in the utility back row or anything like that, such as a dual pivot, but in the sense of actually, he offers that as a lock and as a flanker. Most teams this year, at least in the World Cup, have offered a dual playmaker at the 6 or 7 spot that offers the ability to jump out at line out, but still make plays in the breakdown. And as a former lock in that spot, he offers that obviously in utility. So it shores up a little bit of depth in the Old Glory locker room. It gives a perfect litany of options, whether you can want to run a set play off of him, you want to run him in a separate pod off the line out, and you run him, just use him as a traditional 6. So you can do both. I'm sure as long as he hasn't lost too much of a step, he gives that kind of utility. As for Corey Daniel, I wasn't really able to watch a lot of film available on him, but his stats are actually quite respectable. He has 27 MLR caps as of this moment, and was the lead leaguer in tackles in 2022 with 222 tackles. I obviously think that he's going to just bring that same amount of force and power into this year. He's a young guy on the Eagles, one of the standouts, and he could be a huge shift for Old Glory when it comes to just being on the defensive attack, something that they've desperately missed against New England, that things will better happen in their way, and that now they're looking to challenge them not only in open play, but in the trenches as well. I think another huge thing that I noticed in the offseason, at least in the last couple of days, is ATL's now LA's fire sale of basically any and all of their talent as soon as they moved to LA. I'm not sure if they couldn't find housing for them or if the cap considerations were just too well, but they've been trading a lot since they have landed in the city. I think they see a lot of their academy and local talent coming in. As someone who plays for Santa Monica Rugby Club, our team in Belmont Shore have been really lobbying for that feeder role that we did share with the Guiltinis. But I definitely don't think there's enough talent on either of our rosters to replace what we have available. Like, this is insane. They've traded away Johan Momsen, Justin Bosson to Houston. I thought that was a huge trade. Momsen was ATL's second highest cap player. He has 53 caps at 48 starts. That shows a great ability as a player, not only as a player, but as a leader as well. He scored 12 tries. How are you going to replace that kind of production? Then you have Bosson, who has had 30 caps and 25 starts, and he scored 4 times. He's more of a role player. But Momsen, are you kidding me? What are you doing? Like, wake up. There's things that you can't replace: eligibility and / availability and production, and definitely leadership. So 3 things. All of your players from Rarita Biddle to Rangui or Watokia and now Momsen are gone. How are you going to replace that as a team? I sure hope your coaching staff has really fixed themselves and that your smaller talent from your rookies and your new signings can replace that, because, wow, this is something that it is shocking for me. Maybe they're just trying to do, if it's not just talent, financials, I'm not sure. They supposedly they've been having a lot of hardship in terms of they're being a lot behind the curve in terms of where the Guiltinis were when they came to LA, especially in the marketing standpoint. Perhaps they're reassessing budgets, seeing that players could be sent elsewhere for money that can help redistribute the players. But this is insane. Like I said, this is either going to be a boom or bust year for LA/ATL. And as I've said before, and I'll say it again, this is either going to be the greatest gamble in MLR history, or this is going to be the greatest flop in MLR history. It's definitely up for both. Could this be the MLR's version of tanking for ATL? I'm not sure. I don't know who the draft picks are for next year, except for one. Shout out my boy Tucker Trickey if he decides to come over to back to the 15s lineup and kind of do a playmaker out of 7s. But there must be a reason winning wise. I'm not really familiar with how the MLR does their draft system. It's not, I'm assuming, not probably like the MLS or the MLB where it's off a record based. Perhaps it is, but that's always an option to look out for. I hope that they're not trying to tank. Like I said before, when it comes to teams in LA, if you're not relevant, aka you're not winning, or you don't have a star on your roster, you're not getting remembered, you're not getting followed, you're not getting the coverage you need. So boom or bust this year. We'll see what happens. Another big signing that I thought was surprising was, wow, San Diego picking up the Dallas scrum half Danny Christensen. This is his 3rd team coming off of his stint in Dallas and in Utah. The former Jackal, not fly half, but scrum half, excuse me. He brings a lot to the table in terms of running a threat. A lot of you may know him from his reception to himself off a box kick that set up a huge line break for Dallas to score, to tie up their game and win in against Toronto. He offers a lot off the boot. He's dynamic with the ball in hand. For those of you who have watched Rugby Town 7s, he does a lot off of penalty, that little tap and go movement just to shake things up, keep himself in the rotation. When he's hot with his hands, things happen. And I think he was one of the better players in the Dallas lineup when it came to getting plays to happen, whether it's inside or outside the numbers. His kicking ability off the boot is not to be understated. He offers a lot more to the table for San Diego off of that box kick to kind of slow the game down, manage the time more. And, I think that's what San Diego really missed outside of turnovers in that battle versus New England, was just the ability to slow the game down. They went too fast, and I think they're hopefully realizing that and allocating more players who can kind of change the tempo up more versus just being a running threat off the ball. They also offer a ton of options for the Legion to open their attack. Perhaps they want to stick with their current pairing, use Christensen off the bench. That obviously could be a great way to finish your games, but including Christensen in that starting lineup as a primary option, I think offers them a litany of options, whether it comes to the short ball, playing more physical up front, almost Houston Sabercat level ball, or playing out wide, what their usual, hands down the line, you could say Southern Hemisphere flair that they have traditionally played with over the last, 2-3 years. But, really, I think that's going to be it for me this week, guys. Thank you so much for coming, and peace.